The pounding of her heart was the only sound Amara could hear as she stood at the threshold of her modest apartment in Seoul, her fingers still frozen around the keys in her hand. The door wasn't locked, but she hadn't even touched the knob. The faintest sense of dread seemed to swallow her up in that moment. As she pushed the door open just an inch, a familiar chill crawled up her spine. It wasn't the cold air from the hallway. It was the weight of something darker, a presence. Before she could fully open the door, the latch clicked, and she felt it, the unmistakable tension in the air. Then, in the dimly lit living room, she saw him. Jin-Ho, a name that haunted her. His tall figure, dressed in an impeccably tailored black suit, was as imposing as ever. His sharp jawline and cold eyes, the same eyes that used to be full of passion for her, now only held indifference, but there was something else. Something worse. Behind him stood his 2 men, bodyguards, soldiers, each one equally dangerous, equally cold. And they all stared at her. "You thought you could disappear." Jin-Ho's voice broke through her thoughts, smooth and venomous, like honey laced with poison. "You thought you could escape me after everything we've built together?" Amara's pulse quickened. She could feel the weight of her secret growing heavier, the one she had hidden from him for the past 3 years. Her gaze shifted involuntarily to the small bedroom door, the sound of a child's soft breathing just beyond it. A child she had kept hidden. A child who, now more than ever, was in danger. "Jin-Ho," she started, her voice trembling but defiant, "you have no right to come here." Her hand instinctively pressed against her stomach, a protective gesture, but it also served as a reminder of what she stood to lose. He stepped closer, his shadow overwhelming the small room. "You think I don't know about him? You think you can hide my son?" He smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "I told you, Amara. The moment you left me, nothing stays hidden forever. Not even you." Her breath caught in her throat. "You don't get to claim him," she whispered, fury rising, trying to stand tall despite the fear that coiled in her gut. "You abandoned us. You don't even know him." Jin-Ho's smile disappeared. His gaze darkened. "You think I care about your games? You think this is a choice?" His voice lowered, threatening and cold. "You've had him long enough. But now it's my turn. I'll take him. And if you refuse, you'll never see him again." Amara's mind raced. She wasn't just talking about a child. She was talking about the legacy she had tried so hard to protect. She had kept Kofi, their son, safe from the world that was far too dangerous, far too unforgiving. But Jin-Ho's words were a dagger. The reality of her situation was closing in. There was nowhere left to run. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, as she tried to push down the panic clawing at her chest. "I will never let you take him," she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. "You won't get your hands on him, Jin-Ho. Not now, not ever." But as she spoke, the soft thud of small footsteps echoed from the other room. "Mama?" Amara froze. She had hoped to keep him hidden, but Kofi had heard her voice. He had come out. Before she could stop him, her 3-year-old son, with his mop of curly hair and his teddy bear clutched tightly in his hand, appeared at the doorway. His wide eyes searched the room, landing on the imposing figure of Jin-Ho. Amara's heart nearly stopped. Kofi's innocent gaze shifted from her to the stranger, and he blinked, unfazed by the intimidating man who stood in the doorway like a storm about to break. Amara's blood turned to ice. She rushed toward him, instinctively shielding him with her body. "Kofi, go back to your room," she whispered urgently, but her words seemed weak, powerless in the face of what was unfolding before her. But Kofi didn't move. His eyes remained locked on Jin-Ho, his small face scrunched in curiosity. "Is he a king?" Kofi asked, his voice thick with sleep. Jin-Ho's eyes flickered, the coldness in them melting for a brief, fleeting moment as he gazed at the child. The next moment, something in Jin-Ho shifted. The dangerous edge around him softened, just for a second, and Amara could see it. The raw, aching realization that Kofi wasn't just any child. He was his. He had the same high cheekbones, the same deep-set eyes, the same jawline. Kofi was undeniably his son. The weight of the moment hung in the air. The world outside seemed to blur, leaving only Jin-Ho and Kofi standing at the center. Jin-Ho sank to one knee, his large hand outstretched toward Kofi, trembling just slightly as if unsure of his own next move. "Not a king," he murmured, his voice almost reverent. "But he will be." Amara's heart beat in her throat, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts she couldn't process. What was he saying? What did he mean? The tenderness in Jin-Ho's voice shocked her to the core. It wasn't the calculated coldness she had come to expect from him. It was something else. Jin-Ho stood and turned back to Amara. "You thought you could hide him," he said, his voice no longer laced with anger, but with something far more dangerous. "But now I see him for what he is. He's mine, Amara. And you've kept him from me for too long." Amara shook her head, refusing to believe what she was hearing. "You can't just walk in here and claim him," she said, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear. "He isn't yours to take." But Jin-Ho's cold eyes never wavered. "I will give you a choice. Marry me now, Amara, and keep him with you. I'll protect him, give him everything. But if you refuse..." His words trailed off, the implication more than clear. Her heart raced, and she took a step back, her mind reeling with the weight of his ultimatum. "Marry you," she repeated, her voice shaking. "You're threatening me with a wedding?" A shadow of a smile crossed Jin-Ho's face, but it was far from comforting. "I'm not threatening you, Amara," he said softly, almost tenderly. "I'm offering you a choice. Marry me, and our son will remain with you. He'll be raised as he should be, protected, respected, loved. Or refuse and you lose him. Forever." Her breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words settled in. Marry him? A man who had haunted her past? A man whose legacy was built on blood and fear? She looked down at Kofi, his innocent face, unaware of the gravity of what was being said. He was the one thing that truly mattered to her now. But was it enough to tie her to a man like Jin-Ho? "Make your choice, Amara," Jin-Ho said, his voice low and commanding. "The clock is ticking." Subscribe to this channel to support our growth and get the next chapter, filled with more twists, drama, and emotional tension, coming soon. Amara stood still, her heart pounding in her chest, every muscle frozen as she stared at Jin-Ho, who was still kneeling before her son, Kofi. His voice rang in her ears, his words hanging in the air like a poisonous fog. "Marry me now, Amara, or lose him forever." The room felt smaller, the walls closing in as she looked down at her son, who was now curiously staring at Jin-Ho, the man who had once been a part of her past, the man she had run from. Kofi's innocent gaze was too pure for the storm that had suddenly engulfed their lives. Her fingers tightened around her son, her pulse throbbing in her throat. "I can't," her voice faltered. "You don't get to dictate my life, not like this." But deep down, she knew it wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Kofi. He wasn't just her child. He was his child, and that reality twisted like a knife in her chest. How could she protect him? How could she protect their future from the man standing before her, a man whose power and wealth could crush them both with a single command? The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Jin-Ho stood slowly, towering over her, his dark eyes locked onto hers. He seemed to see through her, his gaze sharp and calculating, as if already anticipating her next move. She had always known he was dangerous, but now, more than ever, she felt like prey caught in his web. "You have two choices, Amara." His voice was quieter now, almost gentle, as if he were speaking to a woman he still cared about. "Marry me, and I'll give you everything. Protection, security. Your son will be raised in the Kong family, respected and feared. Refuse, and I'll take him from you. You'll never see him again. You'll never get to call him your own." She looked at Kofi, his little face still illuminated by the soft light of the apartment. The boy, so innocent, had no idea of the war brewing around him. Amara's chest tightened, the weight of her decision crushing her. "You think I'll just marry you?" Amara said, her voice barely above a whisper. yet it carried the sting of defiance. After everything, you think I'll just walk back into your world? Jin-Ho's lips curled into a small, predatory smile, his jaw tight as he looked down at her, the power dynamic shifting with each word. It's not about what you want, Amara, he said softly. It's about what's best for Kofi. The words stung. She had tried so hard to keep Kofi away from his father's world, to protect him from the violence, the greed, and the corruption that defined the Kong family. But now, the choice wasn't hers anymore. It was about Kofi's future. And no matter how much she hated it, she knew Jin-Ho was right in one thing. He was a Kong. A flash of anger surged through her. I didn't hide him from you for this. Her voice cracked with emotion. I did it because I wanted to give him a chance to grow up away from this, away from you. Jin-Ho stepped forward, closing the gap between them, his presence now overwhelming. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and iron, filled the room, and Amara's breath caught in her throat as he came too close. She instinctively stepped back, but he reached out, his hand gently cupping her face. His touch was soft, almost affectionate, but it didn't hide the underlying tension. You think I wanted this too? His voice was low, almost tender, as if he were trying to understand her. I didn't want to lose you, Amara. But you ran, and you took him with you. You built a life in Lagos, and you thought you could escape what you are. But you're mine. And he's mine. Amara flinched at the intensity in his voice. The depth of his claim hit her like a physical blow. She closed her eyes, trying to breathe through the pain, but her heart was racing, caught between the man she had once loved and the mother she had become. I can't just sign myself over to you, she said, her voice breaking. I can't marry you just to keep my son safe. I won't let you turn us into some possession. I won't let you control me again. Jin-Ho's expression shifted, the tenderness melting away as the predatory side of him returned. His eyes darkened, and Amara felt the chill of his presence settle in her bones. Then you lose him, he said coldly, his words final and yielding. And I won't just take him from you. I'll erase every trace of him from your life. You won't even be able to call him your son. You'll be a stranger to him. Amara's chest tightened, the weight of his threat hanging in the air. He wasn't bluffing. He would do it. He had the power, the resources, the reach. And the realization hit her hard. She had no choice. If she refused, if she fought back against him, she risked losing everything she had worked so hard to protect. Her eyes flicked to Kofi, still standing by the doorway, his wide eyes filled with innocent curiosity. Mama? His voice was small, unsure, and in that moment, it pierced her heart. Mama, is he a king? Amara felt her throat tighten as she looked at her son, her heart breaking for him. No, baby, she whispered, shaking her head. He's not a king. But Jin-Ho wasn't done. He crouched down, his large form looming over Kofi as he slowly reached out to him, his hand hovering near the boy's face. Not yet, Jin-Ho said, his voice tinged with something almost like reverence. But he will be. Amara couldn't look away, her eyes stinging with tears. The man who had once claimed to love her, the man she had tried so hard to forget, was now claiming her child. Claiming Kofi as his own. I won't do this, Amara whispered, her voice low, shaking. I won't let you control me like this. You can't take him. But the smile that spread across Jin-Ho's face was cold, calculated. You'll have no choice, he said. Marry me, Amara. Or you'll never see your son again. Subscribe to this channel for more twists, drama, and suspense in Chapter 3. The heavy silence that followed Jin-Ho's words seemed to crush the air in the room. Amara's heart was racing in her chest, each beat a painful reminder of the reality she had just stepped into. The choice was clear now, but it felt like it was slipping through her fingers. She was stuck between a rock and a hard place, trapped in a game she never wanted to play. Kofi's innocent question lingered in the air, a reminder that he had no idea what was truly at stake. The boy was young, too young to understand the weight of the world that was suddenly pressing down on them. Is he a king? The words echoed in her mind, sending a chill through her spine. But then Jin-Ho stepped forward, his presence overwhelming, his every move exuding dominance. "He will be," he had said. The promise, no. The threat stuck with her, and the gravity of the situation began to sink in deeper. Amara's throat tightened. How had she gotten here? She had once known a life full of freedom, of choices that felt like her own. She had run, far away from the life Jin-Ho had tried to build around her. She had run to Lagos, a city where no one knew her name, where no one could touch her. She had built a new life, a sanctuary for herself and Kofi. She had kept him safe, far away from the violence and fear of his father's world. But now, here he was, standing right in front of her. Her past, in the form of Jin-Ho, had tracked her down, and now he was demanding everything she had worked so hard to keep. Her hand trembled as she cupped Kofi's small face, brushing a stray curl from his forehead. He had no idea of the war raging around them. To him, Jin-Ho was just another stranger, someone tall, intimidating, and strange. But for her, he was something far more dangerous. "I won't let him take you," she whispered to her son, though the words felt hollow in the face of the threat before her. Jin-Ho stepped even closer, his gaze never leaving her. "I told you," he said softly. "It's not a choice anymore." His voice, low and menacing, reverberated in the quiet apartment, making Amara's skin crawl. "You have two options, Amara. Marry me and keep Kofi, or refuse, and I will take him. You'll never see him again. He'll forget you." She wanted to scream, wanted to push him away, but her body was frozen. "I'll never marry you," she said, her voice hoarse, almost breaking under the pressure. "I'll die before I let you have him." Jin-Ho's smile twisted into something darker, something colder. "Then you'll lose him," he replied, his voice steady, as though he had already won. The way he spoke left no room for doubt. "You're already losing him, Amara. He belongs to me. I'll take him. You'll have nothing left." Her chest constricted at his words. The world felt like it was closing in, suffocating her, and all she could think about was Kofi, the little boy who had no idea that his world was about to be shattered. Jin-Ho took a step back, his eyes scanning her, calculating her every move. The silence between them was thick, charged with so much tension that Amara could barely breathe. "You think you can keep him from me?" His voice dropped, dangerously soft. "You can run, but you can never hide. You've already tried." She shook her head, a sharp, desperate breath leaving her lungs. "I won't let you do this to us," she muttered, but she felt the weight of her words sinking deeper into the pit of her stomach. "I won't let you steal my son." Jin-Ho was a man of power, a man who commanded entire empires with a flick of his hand, and now, he was standing in her apartment, pushing her to the edge of a choice she didn't want to make. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a golden envelope and tossing it casually onto the coffee table. It landed with a dull thud. Amara froze. She stared at the envelope, her heart racing. What was it? "What's this?" she demanded, her voice shaking as she reached for the envelope. "What do you want me to do with this?" Jin-Ho smiled, but it wasn't a smile of warmth. "Inside that envelope," he said, his voice smooth and cold, "are the documents that will change everything. Custody papers, court filings. It's all been arranged, Amara. All you have to do is sign them." Her eyes widened in horror as she opened the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of papers, the weight of them heavy with finality. She flipped through them quickly, her heart sinking with every word she read. Custody granted to the Kong family. Full parental rights awarded to Jin-Ho. International injunction filed against Amara Okoi. The words blurred together. "He's already planning to take him." "You've already lost," Jin-Ho said, his voice quiet but final. "All that's left is the marriage." Amara slammed the papers back down on the table, her hands trembling with fury and fear. "I won't marry you," she whispered, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I won't do it." Jin-Ho stepped closer again, his eyes cold and determined. "Then you'll lose him." Before she could respond, the sound of small footsteps echoed down the hallway. Kofi. The child appeared, his teddy bear still gripped tightly in his hand, his small feet shuffling slowly toward them. Mama, he said softly, his voice thick with sleep. Amara turned to him, her heart breaking. She tried to smile, to reassure him that everything was okay, but the look in his eyes told her he sensed the tension in the room. His innocent gaze flicked between her and Jin-Ho, confusion clouding his face. Amara felt a surge of protective love rise up in her chest. She couldn't let Jin-Ho take him. She couldn't let him tear her family apart. Kofi, go back to your room, sweetheart, she said, her voice breaking as she tried to push down the panic swelling inside her. But Kofi didn't move. He took a step forward, his little face full of curiosity. Is he a king? Jin-Ho's eyes widened, and for the briefest moment, Amara saw a flicker of something. Was it longing? Regret? It vanished just as quickly, replaced by the cold, calculating Mafia boss who had shown up at her door. He stood tall, his presence consuming the room as he gazed at Kofi with a possessiveness that made her stomach churn. Not yet, Jin-Ho replied, his voice softer than before. But he will be. Amara stood frozen, her breath shallow as she clutched Kofi tightly to her side. The reality of the situation was sinking in. Jin-Ho wasn't just her past. He was her future, and he was taking what was hers. You can't have him, she whispered, her voice filled with determination. I won't let you. But Jin-Ho's smile was cold, calculated. You'll have no choice, he said, his tone final. You'll marry me, or you'll lose him forever. The weight of his words crashed down on her. The choice was too much. Too painful, but there was no escaping it. And so, the story of love and betrayal began. Amara's heart was torn between her loyalty to her son and the power of the man who was now holding her life, and Kofi's in his hands. Amara had never felt the weight of a decision so heavily. The world around her seemed to spin on a fragile axis, her choices threatening to tear it apart. Jin-Ho's words still echoed in her mind. Marry me or lose him forever. His claim on her son was final, his power over them absolute. And now, Amara stood on the precipice of a decision that could either break her or set her free. The weight of the golden envelope still lingered in her hands, as though its paper carried the very foundation of her future. She could hear the distant hum of the city outside, the faint murmur of life continuing as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Her son was standing next to her, his little hand still clutching his stuffed lion. Kofi didn't understand the gravity of the situation, but Amara could see the quiet curiosity in his eyes. He had never known a world of power and greed. To him, Jin-Ho was just a stranger, someone too tall and too intimidating to trust. Amara's heart ached as she looked down at him. Her son, her life, her everything. She had fought so hard to keep him safe from the world Jin-Ho had created. She had fled to Lagos to give him a life free from the darkness of his father's empire. But now, she found herself face to face with the very man she had run from, and everything she'd built was slipping through her fingers like sand. You know what needs to be done. Jin-Ho's voice cut through the air, his words smooth like poison. Marry me, Amara. Or I will take him. You won't even recognize your life once I'm through. Amara felt her chest tighten. She could feel the walls of the apartment closing in on her, the weight of Jin-Ho's presence pressing down on her like a vice. What choice did she really have? I won't do it, Amara whispered, though the uncertainty in her voice betrayed her. She gripped Kofi tighter, using the child as a shield, a way to hold onto the last shred of her independence. You don't get to decide this for me. Jin-Ho stepped closer, his gaze unblinking, unyielding. I already have. The room seemed to shrink even further as the tension between them escalated. Amara was breathing hard now, the fear mixing with a rising fury she hadn't allowed herself to feel. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about Kofi. He was her world, and no matter what Jin-Ho said, no matter how much power he wielded, she wasn't going to lose him. Amara turned to face her son, forcing a smile on her face despite the storm brewing inside her. Kofi, baby, she whispered, kneeling to meet his gaze. Go to your room, okay? I need you to stay there for a while. Can you do that for Mama? Kofi nodded slowly, but his gaze remained fixed on Jin-Ho. Is he a king? Kofi asked again, his voice soft but curious. Amara's heart cracked at the innocence in his voice. She turned her face away, wiping away a tear that had escaped without her permission. She couldn't break down.
Not now.
Not when Kofi needed her to be strong. Jin-Ho's voice, now low and calm, rang out behind her. He's mine, Amara. No matter how much you fight this, you can't stop it. The words cut through her like a knife, but Amara refused to let him see her crumble. I'm not your possession, she said, lifting her head high, her voice steady despite the trembling in her heart. I won't marry you just to protect him. I won't be your pawn. Jin-Ho didn't flinch. Then you lose him, he replied, his voice devoid of emotion. And I'll make sure you never see him again. The finality in his tone was like a door slamming shut. There was no room for negotiation, no space for hope. It was over. Amara's breath hitched as she took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. Was this really happening? Was this the life she had fought to protect? Could she really give in to him? Suddenly, she felt a familiar warmth press against her side. Kofi had come back to her, his little hand now resting on her shoulder. Mama, is he a king? Kofi asked again, his voice soft and full of innocence. Amara stared at him for a long moment, unsure how to answer. No, baby, she whispered, her voice breaking. He's not a king. But Jin-Ho, standing behind them, couldn't leave well enough alone. He will be, he said, his voice full of cold certainty. Just like his father. Amara's hands were shaking now, but she refused to show weakness. You don't get to decide who he is. Jin-Ho smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. I already have Amara. It's done. He will be a Kong. The tension in the room grew thick, unbearable. And yet, there was one more thing. One last piece of the puzzle that Amara couldn't ignore. Suddenly, Jin-Ho turned to one of his guards, a cold command slipping from his lips. Bring it, he said. Amara blinked, confusion flickering in her eyes. What was he talking about? A few seconds later, the guard returned, holding a large golden envelope, sealed with a red wax insignia. What is this? Amara asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jin-Ho stepped forward, placing the envelope on the coffee table with deliberate force. Inside, Amara, is your future. His voice was low, dangerous. It's everything you've worked for, and everything I will take from you if you refuse. She took a step back, her heart pounding in her chest. Her mind raced, and for a moment, everything felt too heavy. What was in the envelope? What choice was left for her? Jin-Ho watched her, his eyes unblinking, filled with a sense of absolute control. Sign the papers, Amara. And you and Kofi will have everything. Protection, wealth, safety. It will all be yours. But refuse. Amara didn't need to hear more. She couldn't. I won't be your pawn, she whispered again, though the words sounded weaker now, less sure.
I won't marry you.
Jin-Ho's smile widened, but there was nothing warm about it. Then you'll lose him. The door behind her slammed open, and in the blink of an eye, Kofi was gone. Kofi! Amara screamed, her voice laced with panic. She spun around, her heart racing, but it was too late. The door had been shut, and the man who had just stolen her future had taken her son. The sound of Jin-Ho's footsteps behind her was the last thing she heard before everything went black.